Good morning all, and welcome to the annual Association of Police and Crime Commissioners and National Police Chiefs Council Summit 2025, delivered of course in collaboration with the College of Policing. A sincere thanks to PwC, our principal sponsor, and to all of the other sponsors and exhibitors who've made the event possible, allowing us to bring together law enforcement, government colleagues and industries at what of course is a critical time for policing. And at times like this, we do need clear thinking, and I congratulate PwC for being highly commended at the MCA Awards last week for their work on police reform. As we open the summit today, we do so at a crossroads, with tough decisions ahead and choices over which direction we take. We saw last week just how significant those choices really are, and I don't for 1 minute underestimate the impact this has had on colleagues in this room and in PCC and PFCC teams across England and Wales. In light of last week's announcement, I'd like to personally thank Emily and Phil and the APCC team, who very quickly sent a strong message that we have work to do and that this summit loses none of its importance in setting out our collective approach. Policing isn't a forgiving sector at the best of times, and the same can be true for politics. I know that the news of last week wasn't positive for everyone, and on behalf of NPCC colleagues, I just wanted to acknowledge that. We know that each and every one of us in this room is absolutely committed to keeping the public safe, which has been and will remain our goal. Over the coming weeks, we will continue to work together to establish the scale and the nature of reform and the choices we need to make to redesign a police service that is fit for the future. On a practical point, the NPCC Vice Chairs will lead our work on transition planning, so do take the opportunity during Summit to begin that dialogue. Before I go further, I wanted to pause and pay tribute to Baroness Helen Newlove, whose passing last week was as sad as it was shocking. Having suffered an unimaginable tragedy early in life, and despite having every reason to turn her back on the criminal justice system, she did the very opposite, dedicating her life to guide us and make sure that others didn't face the same challenges that she herself faced. Up until recent weeks, Helen, as she insisted on being called, had been supporting us on victim support in relation to high-profile national investigations. She was widely admired by colleagues for her dignified, persuasive and effective approach in changing national policy and practice. She was a true critical friend who told you home truths in a way that compels you to take action. Her legacy is one of extraordinary bravery, advocacy and leadership, and we should all be determined to make sure that victims of crime remain at the very heart of any changes that we make now and in the future. So on behalf of policing, I give thanks to Helen, Baroness Newlove's public service, and send sincere condolences to her family. This year's summit is focused on how we deliver stronger, safer and more cohesive communities in an increasingly digital world. At times this year, our United Kingdom has felt increasingly divided, a position which, in a recent IPSOS survey, 84% of those asked agreed with. Once a route to peaceful resolution, widespread protests have left tensions in their wake, with anti-Semitic hate crime and incidents of Islamophobia at record highs. Between June and August this year alone, over 3,000 protests took place across the UK, 3 times as many as 2 years previous, and some ending in violent disorder. While we absolutely support the right to peaceful protest in a democratic society in which we live and serve, I cannot stand here and say that they've all been of that nature, or ignore the relentless demand that it puts on our services. Too often these protests have been fuelled by disinformation, the majority of which spread online, with inflammatory narratives acutely affecting the safety of our communities in the physical world. I'm sure there are many in this room who stepped forward to lead and suffered online abuse that has left them fearful for their own safety as a result. This is a pervasive threat, not yet countered by sufficient safety measures. In the hands of those with malign intent, the internet is a very dangerous place, not least with the phenomenon known as comm networks, an emerging threat which in the last 3 years has increased 6-fold here in the UK. These online communities see predators working together, using social media platforms to target, groom and push young teens into harming themselves and others in horrifying ways. And this activity knows no border. An NCA investigation into a group known as 764 recently led to arrests for child abuse, kidnapping and murder across 8 countries, including in the UK. And they're one of many. These groups are not hidden on the dark web. They're well within reach in the same online world, games and platforms that young people use on a daily basis. Simply put, the internet is being used as a gateway by abusers, with a recent NPCC survey finding an 82% rise in online grooming against children in the last 5 years. Now, policing will always play its part in protecting the public, but we cannot be arbiters of safety on the internet, any more so than we are for the safety of other big communication systems like air travel or fast roads. These life-changing advances in society required equally significant changes in safety measures, developed over many years and with global cooperation on investment. So, at the crossroads, our first choice: what should the role of policing be in the safety of the online world? How can we lead practical change to ensure that some of the money being made by those online companies is invested back into the safety of young people and children being put at significant risk? I strongly believe to take on challenges like this, we need to reform at a quicker pace. Last year, the previous Home Secretary committed to a National Centre of Policing, and in my summit speech, I deliberately referred to it as a National Policing Directorate, with the mandate to set direction on the issues being faced by the service at the national level, from violence against women and girls to online threats to cybercrime. I also set out that it was one of 5 components of reform, all of which must be focused on local community safety. The emerging threats that I've described may be connected internationally, with national responses needed once and for everybody, but their effects are felt in families and in communities. A National Policing Directorate must have at its core effective ways of listening and consulting, so it can lead on issues of national concern, remove duplication, improve consistency, and enable forces to focus on areas of local community concern which we know are essential for rebuilding confidence. Crucially, it must also support political leaders in making well-informed choices over limited resources, especially if we're to deliver against some of the most ambitious missions this service has ever seen: to halve violence against women and girls, to halve knife crime, both areas of critical public concern. As crime becomes increasingly borderless, a national centre must enable us to work in robust coordination with other law enforcement agencies to strengthen our response to emerging international issues that pose a serious threat to our national security. So, to our second choice at this crossroads: what should be our deliberate design for policing? Which of our responses should be national or even international? Which need regional effort? And what absolutely has to be preserved locally? Before handing over to Emily, there's one final choice I'd like to address. It's perhaps the one most prominent for the theme of this year's summit. In any reform, the choices we make on digital, data and technology are going to be crucial in determining how effective we are in rebuilding trust. From fingerprints to facial recognition, UK policing is no stranger to the use of technology to improve our service. In fact, this year marked 30 years since the introduction of the National DNA Database, a game changer not just for policing, but for the whole of the criminal justice system. Can you imagine now where we'd be without DNA? Can you imagine where we could be with wide-scale deployment of new technologies? To echo Rob Carden at our recent event in Liverpool, science, data and tech are not support functions. They are now operational policing. And yet, successive governments have used police constable numbers as a proxy measure of success. I know of no other profession where the quantity of one employee type is used in such a way. The office of constable is, of course, precious and unique in so many ways, but so are the roles of police staff, and both need to be supported by the very best technology. We must recognise that the police workforce needs to change to ensure that we can keep up with criminal threats and community needs. We need to invest in greater digital expertise to enable the rapid deployment of proven technologies, as it will bring more criminals to justice with less delay and consequently protect more victims. To inform this science and technology investment, we must be clear about the problems that we're trying to solve, with a focus on diagnostics before prescription. Last month, the NPCC Problem Book was launched, which outlines the key areas of concerns for both policing and the public to explore how science and technology may be able to help us tackle them. And earlier this month, we launched the Police Academic Centres of Excellence, a partnership between policing and academia. And at the launch, it was fascinating to see the interaction between the different disciplines, between new sensor technologies, data exploitation, social and economic research. On the latter, we published a report this year that demonstrated for every £1 of investment we make into policing, there is a £4.17 return on housing stock value alone, a similar return on investment to major infrastructure projects. This report told us something that we've instinctively known for some time. Policing is not only good for safety, but it's also good for business and for growth. The research will continue over the coming year with a focus on town centres. So, to our third choice at the crossroads. How should the money in policing be spent? What should the balance be on technology and infrastructure versus workforce and development? And in that workforce, how do we adapt to the need for a much wider range of roles and skills? So as I stand at this crossroads looking at some of these choices, the role of policing when online harms has become a driver for crime, the deliberate design of policing to set us up in the decades ahead, and how to get the best from the money that the public invest in policing, I know one thing for certain. I cannot turn around and head back in the direction from which we came. We cannot retrace our steps. We must have confidence in our stride, be ambitious in our intent, and at the very time when public finances are tough, use that as an opportunity to make difficult choices. If we do, we will find the ways to make the internet a hostile place for criminality. We will, knowing that we're only ever custodians for the next generation, find a design for policing that's fit for the next half a century. And we will have a workforce that exploits the very best of UK science and technology to keep people safe. Thank you.